We're joined by Western Reserve's John Armini. Coach, 19 wins over the past 2 years. You and your staff have built quite a winning culture in such a short period of time. What do you attribute that type of success to?
I have an old school staff. I like to think of myself probably maybe a little bit older than I am. Throwback coaches who really believe in the process.
Sure.
And it takes a lot to get kids to buy into that in this day and age because I think there are a lot more distractions.
Yeah.
Um, but we're a process team. We have a process staff, and we really believe in, working through the little details of the game plan. Really testing the kids' accountability and commitment. And I think that has, given us a lot of opportunities to win some football games over the last couple of years. So I think the process is big. I think any good coach in the Valley, and there are several of them, I think that's the difference. I think between program to program is really how the kids buy into the process. The practices and the film breakdown and scouting and all that stuff. I think and I don't think lots of people, but I think some people try to cut corners, and I think that shows.
How do you see your offensive unit as we approach camp?
It's my kind of football team. I'm an offensive lineman. I've coached offensive line for pretty much all of the 24 years that I've been doing this. And we have four starters back. There are two or three guys that actually are competing for some time there. So really the depth is there as well. I think that we have three very good, strong tight ends. And two of those guys are seniors as well, weight room guys, athletic guys, who will get after the opponent. So I think we're built, to run the football. And that certainly is Chris's strong suit. We have a lot of young guys that we're excited about too, that have to get game experience. They have to be hit. We have to see how they handle the grind of being a varsity athlete. But I think it's built to run the football. Those four starters back on the offensive line are Jackson Young, Dylan Crute, Joe Rovnak, and Alton Ramsey. And those guys are as good as anybody in our league. We like to think that we have two or three of the better linemen in the league. And that should give us a chance, at having some success offensively. We're going to lean a lot on Nate Alexander. I'm glad you mentioned him. He's probably one of our smartest, hardest working, and humblest kids. And we've spent pretty much the last month or two really trying to figure out ways to incorporate him more offensively with touches, whether that be throwing him the ball, whether that be handing him the ball, or to be honest with you, even snapping him the football to get him as integrated, in our offense as possible. Because, I think we're going to need him to show up big time on Friday nights to have success.
From a defensive standpoint, to lose seven starters, that's a huge task for any team. To have linebacker Noah Gonzalez, along with a number of capable returnees and a collection of newcomers, you've made mention to me that this group has lots of potential to becoming very special.
Yeah, there are some big shoes to fill there. And I tell the kids all the time, and it's just coach talk, they kind of brush it off. But I tell them that good teams and good programs graduate good players. It's funny when you go through the previews, and I watch them all. And I'm one of those junkies. I'm on WKBN all the time. I love watching the previews. And I just read the Southeast one that I think you posted in the last like 12, 24 hours. And we don't even play Southeast.
Yeah, yeah.
I just love reading them and seeing it. And coaches, and I get a chuckle because a lot of coaches are, oh, we have 10 starters coming back. And it's like that every year. And it's like, man, they never graduate anybody. And we did. We graduated our best defensive lineman. We get two of our three best back, Caleb Sin and Jackson Young. Were 2 and 3 on our TFLs last season. I think that they both have gotten better. They've gotten bigger and stronger. But we graduate Isaac Burnett. We graduate Nate Hemberger and Don McCarty at linebacker. And those two guys were unbelievable for us. Nathan is the all-time leading tackler at Western Reserve. So, big shoes to fill there, but lots of capable bodies. Wyatt Len, who played JV linebacker last year, gave our varsity line fits as a scout team linebacker, has had a really good off season. He's one of our biggest, strongest players now. Hunter Taylor, another senior who played some meaningful snaps for us last year at linebacker. And then obviously you mentioned Noah Gonzalez. Noah, we're going to lean on heavily up front, making the calls, strength calls. He's had a really good offseason, and is developing into a leader, a little bit more of a vocal presence. One of those things that's most exciting for coaches to see what seniors step up, in the void of having some of those guys that led last year, who's going to kind of take the reins. And he's certainly done that. And I think in the back half, it's some of the same names, but I think you'll see Dom Crute, Shane Ashburn are two sophomores that have done a really good job. Jaden Goddard is another sophomore. So there's some really good skill in our sophomore class. They just need to get hit a little bit. They need to get knocked around. And there'll be some growing pains when you start sophomores, for sure. But I think that some of those guys can be very special. So we need those senior leaders to really come through. Chris and Nate, Josh Potts is another DB that's been repping this summer, who's a senior. So we need some of those guys to provide some leadership for our young guys to learn, on the fly until they get their legs underneath them.
Between now and the opener against Crestview, how do you hope to see this team progress over the next couple weeks to be ready for that week one game and then get into the season?
I've been telling the kids, and I'm going to continue saying it on Monday when we have practice. Every day's got to be a Super Bowl. Every day you have to approach it, like you have to get better or else. And the last couple of senior groups have done that. And again, I feel like a broken record. I've been saying the same things for so many years, but you really have to do that every day. You have to get better at something every day. You have to learn something every day. You have to challenge yourself, and if you do those little things, special things can happen. Our young men in that community come from really good families. They're very resilient. They're very disciplined. They're very hardworking. So we have some good kids to work with. And you mentioned it. I wish the schedule was, I don't wish this, but it's difficult. You come out of the gates, you play Crestview. I think they won 8 football games a year ago. And they're going to be very good. They might be better than they were last year. And Coach Perry does a great job down there. Those kids are physical, they're fast. They have a great game plan. So, we come out of the gates. Honestly, that might be the best team on our schedule, week one. And then we play a Division 5 playoff team in Garfield Trinity. Then we come back with Columbiana, and then we get in the league, and the league is, fast and furious. We play McDonald and Lowville out of the gates. McDonald is, for my money, the team to beat in our league. They had a great group last year that really took us to round 12, in the last seconds. They got their best players back. So Coach Williams and has been doing a great job there for decades, and I think that they'll be the team to beat. So, we can't waste time. That's the other thing too. We can't waste a practice. You can't waste a week. You have to get better every day to have a shot.